Here's integrated 3. It's the closure problem 3-123, and it wants you to rewrite these in simpler terms and then solve them. So we start out with this, and then I don't know, I went through and subtracted 12 on both sides, and then let's see if we can focus it better. I subtracted 12 on both sides, and then I went ahead and the order of operations says you have to square first. So I went over here and I squared it. 2x minus 1 times 2x minus 1. And that gave me 4x squared. It gave me what's inside here. And then I distributed the 3. And I had all this, and I decided to set it equal to 0 so I can use zero product property. So I subtracted the 4x and I added 15 to both sides so that I could have a 0 over here. And then I ended up with a quadratic, but I saw that it was divisible by at least 2, so I divided out 2 on everything on both sides of the equal sign. And then I got this quadratic, and I thought it would be very nice to factor it, but I couldn't find anything that multiplies to make 54 and adds to make -8. So then I decided I better get out my quadratic formula. So I just said I used A, B, and C, and I plugged it all in there. I'll just let you read that. I plugged it in there. I had to simplify this radical. It turned out with a negative inside there. We know that we use the letter I for complex numbers. I is the square root of -1. So when I end up with a negative inside there, it comes out as an I. And then right here, it's kind of like I factored out a 2. You know, like I took half of 8, half of 2, and half of 12. I factored out a 2 on the top and the bottom. I didn't show my factoring. And that's my final answer. All right, letter B. Letter B, it's a square root function, and I'm supposed to solve it. So I wanted to isolate this radical so I could square both sides, so I added the x on both sides, and then I squared both sides, so that undid the radical. And then when I square this, it's not just x squared minus 9. You have to actually square it all the way out. And so, or sorry, not there, but I squared it all the way out, and it turns out to be x squared minus 6x plus 9. So you have to square those all the way out, and it's not just x squared minus 9 like a lot of kids think. And then I want to get all my terms on the same side so I can use zero product property. So I subtracted the 3x and the 1 from both sides. And then that gave me, so now I'm set equal to 0. And so now I'm going to try to factor it. Is this where I factored it? Here's where I factored it. And I got x minus 8, x minus 1. So that gave me 8 and 1. And then I remembered, when I looked in the answer key and saw there was only one answer, I remembered you have to check. You have to plug them back in. So I plugged them back in, and the 8 worked. And then when I plugged, that's supposed to be a 1 right there. When I plugged the 1 back in, it didn't work. So there's just one solution. That's letter B. All right, letter C. Letter C wants me to, well, what I did with letter C is I realized it's a quadratic. I got to get everything on the same side of the equal sign. So I just moved everything to the other side. And then I'm just going to multiply through by 4 to get rid of the fractions. So 4 times 3/4 would be 12/4, which is just 3. 4 times this fraction would just be, -5. And 4 times a half, that's 2. So I multiplied, and 0 times 4 is 0. So that's what happened to those fractions. I multiplied by 4. And then I end up with a nice little quadratic, and I thought I would factor my quadratic. So I got my little, where did I factor it? Up here? I factored it up here, and I got these as my answers. Okay, and then the very last one, I decided to distribute. And so, and then on this one, I have to multiply those together like FOIL, so I just used this area model. And then I realized I had a 4x squared on both sides, so it's kind of like subtracting from both sides. I just crossed it off. And then I wanted to get the x's on the left, so I added 4x on both sides. And then I got negative 4x equals negative 3, divide by negative 4 on both sides, and I get 3/4. And there you have it.